appears at first not to take action as they should, that when there's a hate crime indices, that the federal government can come in and see to it that justice is done, and that's what's happened in this case. There's no question this man had an obsession with young black men and had an obsession with trying to play like he was a policeman himself. Young Trayvon Martin did nothing, and he's dead. And I think it's an indices of other incidences that have happened around this nation. We've seen them in Memphis, Tennessee. Mickey Wright, an African-American code inspector, was killed and only got a manslaughter, a second-degree murder guilty plea in state court. We took it to the FBI. They looked at it. They found out that this man had done something similar and killed an African-American 10 or 15 years earlier, got him a life sentence. It was a white man killing a black man, chopping his body up and burying him across the state lines in Mississippi.
Wow.
We've had situations where the police in Rutherford County, Tennessee, said that a young black man, his last name was Reed, from Memphis, speeding charge, traffic charge. They stopped him, they medicated him, they put a hood over him, they restrained him, they claimed he died of a heart attack. Everything says it's not that way. I'm afraid there is a disparate system of justice for African-American males in this country, and it needs to stop, and it's a type of thing.
There's no doubt about that. Let me ask you, though, let me get specific on this case, Mr. Carter. You had talked about hate crime and the narrow boundaries of it, but this case may really hinge on whether or not he used racial language. And before pursuing Trayvon, he said something that has been raised as questionable as a very serious racial epithet. Let me play this and tell me, if you were back as prosecutor, would you use this, and if so, how, if you had him in a courtroom on trial? Let me play this.
Yes.
Down towards the other entrance of the neighborhood.
Okay, which entrance is that he's heading towards?
The back entrance.
Now, it's muzzled what he says, but you hear some tones that people feel that he's saying a racial slur and a profane word and a racial slur. We beeped it out here, but I think you've heard the tape where people think he used a racial slur that rhymes with boom. And I know the Justice Department is going to have to look at this and elevate the sound. If you're in a courtroom and you're in front of a jury and you know the cases can be at least dealt a serious advantage if, in fact, he did use the term, how do you use this, Mr. Carter?
Well, first of all, you have to get the original copy of the tape. Mm-hmm. You have to use whatever techniques are available to enhance that tape so that the jury gets an opportunity to hear what was said with the greatest possible clarity that's technically possible. And based on at least the excerpts that I've heard of the tape that have been broadcast on this network and other places, I think it'll be fairly plain to the jury that he used an unmistakable racial epithet. So if, in fact, as you suspect that he did, does that not really bolster a case of a state of mind that could lead toward a hate crime? It bolsters it, but it doesn't. But it never makes it a slam dunk.
Right.
As I pointed out last evening, I mean, people have always been in a state of denial over issues of race in this country.
Right.
I mean, unless you're wearing a Ku Klux Klan robe and a cross, there are people who are prepared to suggest every motive possible other than race, even when it's apparent that race may be a motive.
Well, no, there's no doubt about that. But let me go back to you a minute, Congressman. When you look at the residents in Sanford that at the city council meeting on Wednesday night over and over again talking about their distrust of police in their city, look at this.
The police department didn't do an adequate enough job because they used the law for them and against people that's a minority.
It seems as though the police department of Sanford, or the city of Sanford, is condoning what is taking place here. And that's where the mistrust comes in.
When I see a cop, I feel like I should hide, because there's never no reason for me, there's never no justice served for me or a young black man in this city. And I feel like it should not be like that at all.
I've seen a lot in this town. I've seen some good changes, but I also remember a lot of bad stuff. I don't care to dwell on that. But I had hoped that I'd never see what I'm seeing now again in my lifetime. This, to me, is as close as we can come to Jim Crow.
Congressman, it has to disturb you as a public servant to see one after another talk about distrusting the people that they ought to be having the ultimate trust to protect them and to protect their community.
Well, it is disturbing because that's what a law enforcement officer's responsibility is to have trust. And if they don't have trust, you can't really have a good society. They're there to help people and should be, and to see that the law is followed. And there's no trust, obviously, in that community. There's not trust in a lot of communities. And I think there needs to be a major discussion. You know, Bill Clinton talked about having a discussion of race in this country. Right. We still need that in a major way, and it needs to take place. We had an apology for slavery and Jim Crow that the House and the Senate passed, but we never got that culminating moment when we could get together and have that discussion. I'm going to
have to break in because we're going to run out of time. I'm sure you agree with that, Mr. Carter.
I certainly agree. We need that conversation, but we need to talk about both the bias aspects and the affinity aspect, because you pointed out before there have been 3 incidents now involving the Sanford police in which they appear to have given an inappropriate benefit of the doubt to persons who have a special relationship with the police department.
Congressman Cohen and Mr. Carter, thank you for your time.
Reverend Al, keep on keeping on.
We will do that, and thank you both. Have a nice weekend, please. Ahead, how George Zimmerman may have corrupted the Neighborhood Watch program in order to play cop. And my thoughts today on today's emotional words from the President of the United States. Stay with us.